Welcome everybody to another Toy Guys Talking. Toy Guys Talking is back, and joining me today is Stuart Norris from the Patreon tribe. How you doing, Stuart?
I'm all good, thank you.
Now, are you related to Chuck?
I wish.
A fun game. I don't know if you saw one of the earlier videos where I watched the intro to Chuck Norris's Karate Commandos, and I had to do a little ding every time the narrator says Chuck Norris.
Oh, okay.
Like
yeah, I haven't seen that one.
It's absurd the number of times they say Chuck Norris. It's literally Chuck Norris in Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. Chuck Norris. Like, why does he keep saying Chuck Norris? So if someone out there, if you want to play along for this Toy Guys Talking, every time I say Stuart Norris, ding, we should have a Stuart Norris.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, let's talk toys. What you don't have to get specific, but what era did you grow up in?
I was born in the 70s, mid-70s, so I grew up in the 80s. So it was Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Master of the Universe, all the cool stuff. So I look back on those times with fond memories. And, yeah, definitely. And
you got to see Star Wars in the theater?
I would have been too young to see the original Star Wars.
Same here.
I was just old enough to go and see Empire Strikes Back, but I don't really recall much of the experience of seeing it at the pictures. So Return of the Jedi was the first one that I was old enough to sort of remember and sort of like enjoy the experience more so. And when the others come out on the VHS at the time, then I sort of watched them there and just went from there really. So yeah.
You know, I don't have any envy of the people who got to see Empire Strikes Back in the theater. New Hope would have been cool to see, but it's like, I think I dodged a bullet with Empire. It would have been nice to see Return of the Jedi. That's just fun. But Empire, like, that's a tough day at the office for the heroes. So I'm just imagining, like, seeing that as a single-digit kid, like, age in the single digits. You know, there's so many people who look back on it fondly now, but I imagine what it must have been like to walk out of the theater. Like, I don't know if anyone still retains these memories, but the good guys got whooped, and that just didn't happen in fantasy or like kids shows or kids movies type of thing.
No, I couldn't say. It was definitely the darkest one out of the three, for sure. With just like the storyline and what actually happened with the characters and stuff like that. And I think personally, I feel that brought sort of like a more realistic type of thing. That okay, you might be the hero, but sometimes things aren't always going to go your own way, and you're always going to get put on your backside every now and again, so to speak. But the important thing is of how you react to that and how you respond to that and what your actions are after that kind of defines you as a person. If you can take a beating and get back up again, then I think that's a good lesson in life, in general life itself, to be honest. So that's what I take from that. But
it's like a requirement of a good hero.
Yeah.
It's like just getting the tar beat out of you used to be an absolute requirement of being a hero. Like it came with the territory. Yeah. And the baddies got whooped too, but it seemed like the heroes were the ones that not only got the physical whooping, but also the psychological, the self-doubt or the worry for other people, the compassion being almost, like in Prime's case, compassion almost being a weakness. Or definitely a chink in the armor, like because that would be the cause of his defeat many times. So we seem to have, not to turn this into a everything sucks, everything used to be better, because there's lots of cool.
No. It's
There's lots of cool stuff out there, but one change I've definitely seen, and a lot of people have I think seen it more clearly than I have, and they talk about it a lot more than I do. But there seems to be heroes these days that don't go through the mill. They don't get put through the meat grinder as much these days. And we've got these terms like Mary Sue and Gary Stu with characters that just, they get whatever they want. They get it on the first try. Nothing ever gets the best of them. It's almost like, do you remember The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with Clint Eastwood?
I know the film. I don't think I've not seen the film, but I do know.
I highly recommend it. But Clint Eastwood in that movie, he's very cagey. He's very witty. or
Yeah.
clever. He's very clever, and he seems to always get the best of everyone in that movie, which it reminds me a lot of the male version of a Mary Sue as a Gary Stu.
Yeah.
So it's like no one can ever seem to get the best of this guy in this movie, except at one point, one guy does get the best of him and absolutely torments him and almost tortures him to death.
Yeah.
Ties him up and forces him to walk through a hot desert with no water. And by the end of it, Clint is just they did the makeup on him to make his skin flaking and peeling off of him, and he's on death's door. So that was like the big okay, so he's not invincible. He's not
Yeah.
bulletproof. Like
Yeah.
this guy got the best of him and he got out of that by the skin of his teeth. Again, by being clever, but still he
Yeah.
suffered so much. And I think that's important. Luke Skywalker wouldn't be the hero that he ended up being if it wasn't for the hand getting cut
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So, it's a brutal scene. I
It is.
still
That scene scared the life out of my young boy at the time.
I still
He
wonder,
was,
like, what's the correct age for a kid to see that? Because something, I don't know, something doesn't sit right with me when someone says, "Oh, it's fine for a 7-year-old." Like, I don't know if it is. Like,
I
maybe,
think
and
it was a PG over here, parental
yeah,
guidance over here. So I don't know whether that's the same in Canada.
uh, I don't think it was, but that's such a brutal scene, and I just don't know how you can sit down and have a heart to heart with like a little kid, and
Yeah.
tell him, like, it'll like which way do you approach it? Do you approach it from the filmmaking standpoint of he's fine, that was a movie, that's all for play,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you do the similar thing, like what's
Mm.
the disappearing? I don't even remember how to do it anymore. The disappearing thumb thing. See, it's all
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Or do you take it from a story point and say he did get hurt, but he's going to be okay? I mean, that's why it was so important to give him the bionic hand at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine if they waited till the next movie to give him that hand? It's like 3 years
Yeah.
of going, oh no.
Wow. Yeah. No, they were good films. Good films. A lot of good
Absolutely.
films out in that time.
Absolutely. I almost wonder if, like, Empire Strikes Back, I'm sure they didn't intend this at the time. It was just, it needed to be the middle act. They looked at the Star
Mm.
Wars trilogy as a full film, and Empire
Yeah.
is just the middle act.
Yeah.
And, hats off to them, or at least the tip of the cap to them, for making the middle part of that movie, in a lot of people's opinion, the best part. Because how many times do
Yeah.
we go, love the beginning, love the ending? Yeah, the middle kind of drags. Well,
Yeah.
Empire's the middle of the Star Wars
I
original
mean,
movie.
the good thing about Empire is that where they've left it, it's like you're so engrossed with it that you want to watch the next film, The Return of the Jedi, because you want to know what's happened. You want to know what's going to happen. You want to know how it's going to play out. And I think that was very
Mhm.
clever to captivate an audience like that, to then get them to want to come back and watch the third installment, because you don't know what's going to happen. You know, if that's happened to Han Solo at the end and Luke's been beaten up, what's going to happen in the next film? You don't know.
There
And I
has
just
to
think
be.
that's so clever.
That makes me wonder. I've never really thought about this, but it's a thirst for redemption. Like, we've got to
Mm.
get Han back. Luke's got to
Yeah.
get Vader back for what he did to his hand, or even Luke's got to get his father back. Like, it's one or the other. Luke's got to get his redemption one way or another, either
Yeah.
revenge or saving his father. I am your
Yeah.
father. I wonder if the reason, like, movies like that aren't done as much is because it seems to me like the whole thirst, desire for redemption, has also kind of not. It's not as in demand anymore,
Mm.
and I just pick up that feeling from how many cancel parties we see these days.
Yeah.
Like, on Twitter, and I think it's mostly Twitter, but there's always someone being canceled for something. Like, they might have even said 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they might not, it might not even be in covering something that's inappropriate and was even inappropriate back then. What I'm
Yeah.
starting to see, and a lot of people probably, can think of quite a few things already, in the past month that's similar to this. But, like, people are getting called out on things that weren't inappropriate, um, you know, when they said it. I mean, times
Yeah.
change. So there
Yeah.
were, like, there's certain words that were tasteless had no class even 50 or 100 years ago. And those words should just be dropped by everybody. Like every race, creed, and religion should
Yeah.
drop these. But what I'm thinking of is like, I don't know. I don't really want to get this into a heated racial topic, but one thing that pops into mind is the General Lee and the flag on the roof, which really meant something, at a different time, especially in the show. I never took the use of the Confederate flag to be any type of racial statement. It was more of "Dem Duke boys, yee-haw" type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
If anything, they made it their own. But
Well, to
now,
be honest, I mean, when that TV series was on in the UK, as a kid, I was just watching it thinking, what a cool car.
yeah,
And I loved the flag on the top. Didn't have a clue as to what the flag stood for. And,
same here.
when you grow older and then you get to learn what these things mean and stuff like that, do you look at it in a different way? Do I look at that General Lee and the Dukes of Hazzard and think, yeah? Or do I just look at it as a kid, what a cool program it was, what a great car?
Yeah, like
I
to
mean,
me, it was the Duke's flag, and I knew it as the Duke's
yeah.
flag for years and years. I mean, I would see later on when I would watch professional wrestling, and I'd see the Freebirds come down to the ring, and they'd be sporting the stars and bars. I'd go, "Oh, the Dukes of Hazzard flag." Like I didn't go the Rebel flag or the Confederate. I went, "Oh, it's the Dukes of Hazzard," because that's what I associated with. And I
Yeah.
saw a great movie on Amazon not too long ago. I think it was called The Congressman with Treat Williams. Treat Williams is just a real hidden gem of an actor who was in Empire Strikes Back. Actually, he was one of the Hoth rebels. I think
Oh, okay.
he might have been involved with Carrie Fisher at the time. But there's a picture if you Google Treat Williams Empire Strikes Back. There he is in the Hoth rebel gear somewhere in the background. But he did a movie called The Congressman, and it talks a lot about how times have changed and things mean different things. And he brings up the Hitler salute. And he said, "Do you know they used to have kids do that in school?" And everyone's like, "No, no, no, that's heresy." And he goes, "Look it up. Kids used to do the Hitler salute in school because it meant something different. But then you had this guy come along and he took it, he made it his own, and now it's taboo." So not that, like in the case of the General Lee, like that's not what's happening there. They already took something that had a previous meaning. But I mean, like the Iron Cross, I've heard, or what is it? I don't want to get into Nazi Germany type of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate when that type of thing happens and people just can't go, "Look, man, it was a different time. It was a different time. It was a different meaning. The time is over. We're not like trying to fight to get that back. If they don't want to fly Confederate flags anymore, then don't. And you can't do the Hitler salute in school anymore. That's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But you can't really change history, and you can't punish people for things that weren't abolished at the time. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
It is. It is. But like I say, times change, and we move forward and move on, and hopefully from what has happened in the past, we can learn from the past and put correct and make a better future. That's how I look at it anyway. Simple. Well, I would say simple, but
So would you say Star Wars is your favorite property?
of the movies or just in general?
Like for
That's
collecting, because I see the Tidarium there beside you and a dewback in the back.
Yeah, I actually got that shipped over from the USA. That was one of my holy grails.
Isn't it huge? I used to have that.
It is big.
It's shockingly gigantic.
It is big. I mean, what I have now, this is my third collection. So as a kid, I had the Star Wars toys and stuff like that, and had a friend, and we used to go around like his head every weekend and just play and stuff like that. And because he was an only child, he had like loads and loads of it. And because I was like from a family of 3 kids, obviously the money and whatever had to get shared out between the 3 of us at Christmas.
Yeah.
So I was getting bits and bobs every now and again. But yeah, Star Wars was my main. And then when I got to the age of, I think it was about 14, 15, my mum said, "Look, it's in the loft. Do you want it, or do you want to give it to a friend, like a friend's kid?" So I was like, "Nah, okay, yeah." And foolishly, I let my mum give it to some other kid.
Not,
and then that was mad. Yeah, I don't know.
Not foolishly. It was the right thing to do at the time.
At the time, yeah. In hindsight, but, and then
and you know what? You probably created some really incredible, magical memories for that kid.
Yeah, well, this is true. I see. That's the flip side of the coin. That's how you look at it that way. And then in the 90s, they re-released the Star Wars figures, didn't they? With the
Oh, the
Harrison
Schwarzenegger.
yeah, yeah.
They will
And
never live that down.
no, I was so excited that they were actually doing more Star Wars
Me
figures, and I was
too.
like, wow, okay. And then I saw them, and I was just like, what have they done?
I
Oh,
was too excited to notice the ridiculousness of the muscles at first. I mean,
yeah,
I wanted the Kenner figures so bad, and there was nothing. There's no toy shows, no vintage toy shops, nothing anywhere,
exactly. Yeah,
no
yeah.
eBay, and I just was like, we are getting Star Wars toys again. Oh my god, I missed the whole first run, so I was like,
Yeah,
thank you.
I hear that. I hear that. How come?
It was scary.
Oh,
It was creepy. I
yeah.
my first memory of Star Wars was like in the schoolyard. Well, I saw it flipping through the channels. I never went to see it at the theater, but I saw Luke unmasking Vader on TV,
Okay.
and it creeped the heck out of me. Like
Ah,
Vader looked awful. Like he was not just bald, but
yeah,
pale, and the black circles under his and the burn. I mean,
yeah,
they made him look like like a typical, hero. He had been through the
yeah,
mill.
yeah.
But as a little kid, I saw that and went, yuck. You know what? And then he died. So
Yeah, oh, well, yeah,
I don't know if I got to that part, but he just
yeah,
looked awful to me. And other things I had seen, I think in commercials and stuff, I'd seen Jabba the Hutt, and it scared the crap out of me. And just everything.
yeah,
It wasn't just like Darth Vader was a big scary villain or anything, but it was how convincing the creature effects were. I'd never seen anything like that in real life.
yeah.
For puppets, I was used to Muppets, and then
Mm.
like what is this Jabba the Hutt and the Sarlacc pit? Yuck! So I was queasy as a kid, being big GI Joe and Transformers fan. I wasn't into the like creepy
Mm.
stuff like that. But I got into Star Wars when Transformers and GI Joe and He-Man all got canceled, and I was like,
Oh, okay.
and I don't know why I moved on to Star Wars. It was another canceled thing, but I was like, well,
Yeah.
I haven't done this yet, and I know there was a big following of it, and that's when I realized like, oh, this is all about the story. Like this is an incredible story.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's a great story.
What do you?
That's
I guess we should talk about maybe for a few minutes the new stuff, the Disney regime. Okay, shall we move on?
okay.
I think that says
Um,
it all.
uh, well, it's more the prequels as well. It's
Aren't those better
because
now? Now that the the new movies have come out,
well, I mean,
they found a way to make the prequels better. So
well, yeah, yeah, yes. Yeah, I just I don't know what it is with films these days, modern day filmmaking. But you look at the Transformers, even to extent GI Joe. I feel they've lost something in somewhere in making those films. They've lost the essence of the films. I mean, for me, Bumblebee is the only true Transformer film since the 80s because of the time period it was set. It was set in the 80s,
yeah,
and he was a Beetle. And I absolutely loved that film. I think that's probably one of the best films I've seen from a kids' TV series from when I was back in the 80s. Bumblebee has got to be the top of that list of all the films that I've seen so far. I mean, the others were like Transformers, and then the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. Yeah, I mean, I just feel they lost a little bit of what that meant to me in the 80s, watching those cartoons and the figures and stuff like that as a kid.
and it's not just the property; it's the times. They've all done it.
Yeah,
It's not like, oh, can Transformers work in the modern day? Can GI Joe? Anything can work, but what is being done most of the time, in my opinion, is style over substance.
yeah, for sure.
That's what it
Yeah,
is. Style, style, style. Fashion, fashion, fashion over, you know, fashion over spirit, or alliteration would be better there, but I can't think of an F word to represent spirit. But you feel
yeah,
it. I mean, you feel it. It's the difference between a roller coaster ride and a really, really awesome book. Like
yeah, yeah,
roller coaster is easy. You jump
mm,
on the thing, you go, whoa,
yeah,
and that's it. It's done. And you don't hold on to it for weeks or months. You don't go, oh,
Yeah.
that roller coaster. You just,
Yeah.
that, because it was so easy. But you read an awesome book and it, or a comic, and it just sticks with you. It just
Yeah.
sticks. And look at the original trilogy. It's stuck with people for decades,
Exactly. Exactly.
for the majority of their life. It's stuck.
I,
Why?
I,
Because it
I think the
was
mistake. So I think the mistake with the Star Wars, I'd say a mistake. George Lucas wanted to wait until he had the technology to tell the
that's
first
the
part of this story,
biggest
and
problem.
that's the thing.
It shouldn't have
And
mattered.
it shouldn't have mattered. But there was a 20-year wait between Return of the Jedi and the Phantom Menace, and then with the prequels, there was another 20 years. I think it was 20 years.
1999 was Phantom Menace,
Phantom
so
Menace, yeah. So there was a few years between the Revenge of the Sith and the Force Awakens, and in those time, how you make films changes, the way people perceive films change,
yeah.
the acting style changes. I mean, if I'm honest, I look back at the old Star Wars movies, the originals, and I think they can be as cheesy as hell, but it works. It worked for that time period.
It's very endearing.
Yeah, it is. And those films, like you say, they stick with you for, well, they stuck with me, certainly, for age I am now. But the new films, I just think, as good as they are visually, I mean, The Last Jedi, I mean, cinematically, there are some great shots in that film, cinematically.
There you go.
And
Two
there
compliments
you are.
for every criticism.
There you are. But, but then I don't want to be accused of not being a Star Wars purist because I have an opinion on certain films and stuff like that. I mean, I love Star Wars, and you've got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
I just feel, everybody has an opinion.
There's some fans out there who say, well, you got to love it all if you want to call yourself a Star Wars fan. I think we're at the point now where we can stop saying that, where that's really not realistic anymore. That's kind of, there's so much Star Wars. I understand saying that when there were 6 movies.
Yeah.
I understand saying that when there were 8 movies. But there's a lot of movies. There's a lot of shows.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of episodes of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I mean, that was great. That was a great series. That really was. I mean, have you seen those?
Yeah, quite a few of them. And even with
yeah.
Clone Wars, there's hit or miss episodes. So you could even say, like, are you a Clone Wars fan? Well, you gotta love it all if you want to call yourself a Clone Wars fan. Well, I like some Clone Wars and some I don't like. It's like cheese, Like, do you like cheese? Well, I like some cheese and some I don't. I like Gouda. I don't like that plastic stuff that claims to be cheese.
Yeah.
I think we can now say I like this and that Star Wars, and no, I don't have to like it all, and we don't have to dwell on it because there is so much. Why not spend that time that you might use to complain? Why not use that time to go read a Timothy Zahn book or some of the Dark Horse comics and talk about the good stuff? Like
there's a lot of good stuff.
And we don't need our hand held. Like, I know sometimes it's really nice when the studios are rolling out the new thing and saying, this is the big new special thing. Get excited for it.
Yeah.
Big new movie, big new book, big new comic.
Yeah.
But you don't always have to be told what to be excited for. I mean, it's not trendy. And this is like the big important thing that I think it's important for people to understand. You can get excited about things that aren't trendy. Quite the opposite, in fact. And sometimes those are the best things to get excited about. I'm excited about Fletch right now. Fletch is a dead and buried property, has been for, 30 years? But it's new to me. Like I didn't see the movie since I was a kid and absolutely loved it. And reading the books now, which I never even knew existed. And I've been reading those Sobs books for a while, too, and love them. And I don't know, I've found more enjoyment in things that are canceled. That I know it's like, okay, we have a finish line. We don't have to worry about where's this show going or where's this movie going. I've just seen so many people disappointed, with where these movies went and where these shows went. And I'm just sitting here going, well, I'll just enjoy my thing that was canceled 20 years ago and not have to worry about the reboot.
What got me onto your channel? I first saw on YouTube. It was when you were doing your USS Flag,
The
and
ultimate USS flag.
apologies, ultimate USS flag. And I just thought that was so amazing. I looked at that and I just thought, wow, that. I mean,
I had the
I
same
have no way to put
reaction.
it in my face, but yeah,
Thank you. I had the
wow,
same reaction when I saw G.I. Joe Berg do it. Like I went,
yeah,
why isn't every flag? Why didn't it come like this? So
yeah,
tip of the cap to them for coming up with that because it's a very easy design. I mean,
yeah,
uh, case in point, I did it, and I
yeah,
don't have any carpentry skills or building skills worth a lick. I can edit
mm,
like nobody's business on a computer,
yeah.
but I'm not good with any of that stuff. But it's very simple. It's just a bunch of
That
blocks, and you put your flag up on it.
that's the first time I've seen anything like that. Which was your video, was whether you was originated it or not. You were the first person rather that I saw, and I was like, wow, that is just so cool. That is amazing. And I'm looking around the room going, where can I put this in my play? Where can I put this? Where can I get one of these? And I've just, yeah,
Have you gotten one?
I don't, no,
Will
I don't
you?
have them. I,
You find room for the USS flag.
I'll find. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the
But
thing
no,
about the
it's
flag.
just so cool. Oh wow.
There was I've heard of flags being hung from the ceiling for people who don't have the room.
Wow.
They hang it from the ceiling because
Yeah.
when
See,
you find the room for the flag and the
yeah.
Defiant too, I believe.
I mean, yeah. Again, that's. I mean, there's some vehicles that I've seen in your collection that I didn't even know existed. The Defiant being one of them.
I don't
Golden
have the
Thunder being
Defiant.
another. Oh no, but I mean, you don't have the Defiant.
No,
Okay.
no, I haven't tracked that one down. But some of the other big ones are the Mobile Command Center and the Rolling
Yeah,
Thunder.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even know these existed.
yeah.
I really didn't. I mean, I didn't even know the flag existed until I saw your video, and I was like, wow.
The tackle box base that's the GI Joe base that opens up like a tackle box.
Yeah, yeah.
Mobile
I
Command
mean,
Center. Were you into GI Joe at all when you were young?
I
Or I
was,
guess it was
yeah.
Action Force, right?
It was Action Force at the time. Because I was so into Star Wars, a friend of mine had a lot of Action Force stuff, and he was the single kid who had everything basically toy wise. I was just like that again. But yeah, he had Action Force, and at the time, um, we had like the Z Force, and they were like the 5 point of articulation, so there was no sort of like
Elbow or
double
knee,
joints or elbows or
like Star Wars
O-rings.
figures, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the only O-rings we had were the guys that drove the vehicles, but they were remolds of GI Joe figures. So Blades, the guy who flies the SAS Hawk chopper, which is just a repaint of the Cobra Fang,
Hmm.
was Tripwire, and he was just painted up black. Then you had Snake Eyes, the original Snake Eyes from the first wave of GI Joe. They just painted his face bit grey and a couple of grey bits on him, and he was named Stalker, and he was the SAS Panther Jeep driver. There
Interesting.
was Quarrel, she was Scarlet, so
Yep,
they just
I've
put her
seen
in
that
green.
one.
And she just Quarrel. Then you had Destro. He was I can't remember the names, but so we've had Destro, we've had a Cobra Commander, we've had a Cobra Officer, and he was all black, and he was Hunter for the Wolverine, which
Hmm.
is like your Wolverine. And what else was there? We had Stalker and Gung Ho, and they come with a couple of Z Force bits, but they are so ultra rare to find. And yeah, I've seen them on eBay, and I'm just thinking I'm not paying those prices. So
Yeah.
Gung Ho had like a red jacket, and the camouflage, what have you, and Stalker had a
Did he still have the
red
Marine
cap.
emblem on his chest? Gung Ho?
Yeah, he did.
He
Yeah,
did. So he's still a Marine, even though
yeah,
he's part of Action Force.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And then the enemy for Action Force at the time was Baron Armblood and the Red
Cool, mate.
Shadows, and they were pretty cool. And then we started getting Action Force come over, but they were with the joints and the O-rings. So the first wave over in the UK was like Gung Ho, Airborne, Ripcord, Duke, Scarlet, and because Cobra was the enemy at the time, there was a comic called Battle Action Force in the UK, and it was like a paper. It wasn't like the comics we get, the glossy comics that we still get. It was about this big, and it was a paper, and it was just different SAS missions, Z Force missions, and when Cobra come into the picture, they had to do a crossover as to where Action Force then started fighting Cobra as the enemy instead of the Red Shadows. So they did it where, I'm not too sure the story, but Baron Ironblood went off and became Cobra Commander. And I
Really?
think, apparently so, yeah. So
That's
I've
a
seen,
crossover for you.
So yeah, and I think, who was it? The Black Major, he gave himself up, and I think he gave up the rest of the positions for the Red Shadows and stuff like that. And then Baron Ironblood went off and became Cobra Commander, and then that's how Cobra come into
Wow.
it with Destro and I mean, I've tried looking for that storyline. I mean, I've heard other people talk about it on YouTube and stuff like that, and I've just never. I kind of vaguely remember when I was a kid, but
So the
yeah, so
backstory is there. It's been there all along. If you want to kind of work that
yeah,
into your
so,
head canon.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
because the one thing that usually doesn't work for me is when they come out with the prequel stuff these days, and they
Oh,
go,
okay,
"We're
yeah, yeah,
we're gonna tell you how it all came to be," and I'm like,
yeah,
you can't. And there are exceptions, but for the most part,
yeah,
you can't because you can't.
yeah,
Like they so rarely capture the spirit of what created the thing in the first place, and they so
exactly, yeah,
rarely draw from the same inspiration that created the thing in the first place. It's like when we get some prequel thing explaining something of something in Star Wars, and they're not drawing from those serials that Uncle George drew from. they're
yeah,
they're,
yeah,
they're drawing from Game of Thrones. I'm like, don't draw
yeah,
from that. that's
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
not
I
how
know.
you do a
It's
prequel.
what I
So
loved about Star Wars was the originality of it, and then you know, you've got to keep them true to the story. I think definitely, and it's the same with everything really.
do you know how many issues that comic was with Baron Ironblood?
Battle Action Force. Oh my
Battle
gosh.
Action Force.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, it went from when did I think it was the time when Action Force went from the 12-inch to the three-quarter inch. I think that is the time. So I don't know whether that was around about 82,
Okay.
1982. I think, don't quote me on that because someone will probably type down and say, no, that was
Yeah.
wrong. I don't know the exact time, but I think it was around about that time when it went from the big stuff to the Z Force, Action Force, Q Force, and C Force.
It makes a bit of sense because that's
Mm.
Real American Hero O-rings came out in '82, so
Yeah,
about then. So that's
yeah,
I'm extremely
yeah,
intrigued about that. I've never heard that
yeah.
before.
No, it was,
Cobra Commander's past has always been kind of hush hush, maybe thrown out
yeah.
there, but just not
I don't
interesting
know.
enough for me to remember.
I don't know whether that would have been in the backstory for you guys because
No.
GI Joe came out and that was your enemy and initially was Cobra, but they wanted a way to transition from
Yeah.
the Red Shadows from what we were used to in the UK to justifying why Cobra are now on the scene, and I think that's where they sort of worked the story into the two.
I love that kind of stuff. Like
Mm,
even if it isn't official and it's not canon, I just think it's brilliant. Like,
yeah.
and I'm perfectly fine with creating my own head canon. So I'm very interested in tracking down. So what other toys? Transformers, He-Man in the '80s.
Yeah, Transformers. I mean, my nan went over because I've got relatives in the States, and my nan went over one year, way back when, and she come back and she said, "Oh, I've got you a toy," and I was like, "Oh, great, great, great!" And she stuck this box in front of me, and it was like it was a car. I said, "Okay, that's all right." And then I was looking at it, and I was driving it around, and didn't really sort of comprehend what it did. And my dad looked at it, and he goes, "Well, look, it does this," and I was like, "Oh, wow!" And it was Jazz. That was my first ever
Oh,
Transform. So that
that's a
is the
good one
one
to
that
start with.
that's the one that means a lot to me. That because that was my first Transform, and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I love this. And I was like, look at that, I got this from America because no one had one over here at the time. I mean, they hadn't sort of like come out to the UK, and then they sort of like come over to the UK, and then everybody's getting one. And I was like, yeah, okay, that feels special now.
Do you know what ended up
But,
happening to that Jazz?
yes, yeah. A lot of my stuff that I had, like my Sky Striker and my Z Force main battle tank, they all stayed around a friend's house because I got sick and tired of carrying them backwards and forwards every like weekend and that. So I just left them out there, and that's where they stayed. And I've not been in contact with this guy for 30 odd years now, so I don't know where it's all gone. But yeah,
Come a
but
knocking.
practically, yeah. So I mean, like the Z Force battle tank, that was my first um, Action Force toy, so to speak. And then a few years later, I got the Sky Striker, But then I think by that time I felt that I was growing out of that kind of
Yeah.
growing out of it all and
What
stuff
a
like that.
horrible mistake that was when we all
Oh,
thought
I
that.
know. Yeah, yeah. But no, that's why I'm starting like really now, sort of like focusing my attention because I've got so much Star Wars stuff. It's nice to get collect other things. So I'm starting off with like the SAS Force and stuff like that. And then I will go on to Z Force and then whatever. And hopefully I'll start getting the GI Joe. But a lot of the GI Joe stuff, is not available in the UK. So I have to go on eBay and then prices, and then you get your tax and your import duty
Oh,
fees and all that
yeah.
sort of stuff, and it just bumps it up. I mean, I was looking for a flag, and they had a couple in the US, and they're expensive. So you're looking over $100 to just to ship it
Oh, yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah,
you know,
easily. Was there an Action Force flag?
no,
No.
no, there was no Action Force flag. I mean, we had practically all the vehicles that you guys had. We had the Hiss tank, but that was called the Hyena when it was with the Red Shadows. And then, so yeah, we had the Hiss tank, we had the Whale, we had the Rattler. I think we pretty much had all the vehicles apart from the big flag and stuff like that. So,
It really reminds me a lot of, if you remember a show called Sliders with jumping from dimension to dimension.
it rings a bell. I haven't seen it.
It was a show on Fox in the '90s where this guy, this young genius, creates. He was trying to do something else. I forget exactly what it was. Maybe an anti-gravity device. He was trying to do
Mm.
something else, and he stumbled upon this incredible invention. He was able to open up a wormhole, and he steps through it, and it's like, what's the big deal? And then there's a statue of Joseph Stalin where there's supposed to be a statue of Teddy Roosevelt or something. Something drastic has
Oh, okay.
changed, and he's like,
Yeah, yeah,
what the hey? And he keeps seeing like these differences. Like, oh, this is an alternate dimension. Like things went differently, and the whole show is about jumping from dimension to dimension. And when I think of Action Force, when I see all this stuff of Action Force, to me that's like the alternate dimension of like it came from the same spark. Let's do a
yeah,
military based line, but it's really intriguing to see the parallels and the differences between the GI Joe line and the Action Force line. There's so much stuff that's so similar, but then at the same
yeah.
time, like I look at Tiger Force and Python Patrol, and it's not my cup of tea. Like I look at it and go missed opportunity. I see what could have been different, like why not desert camo? Like
Yeah,
that would have made me go, I already got a vamp, but wow, that looks good with that desert camo or an Ostrike or something like that. So I see Python Patrol, I'm like, yuck. But then I see some of the Action Force stuff, like the black with the yellow color scheme, and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
ooh, that
yeah.
looks pretty. Wow.
Well, actually, saying that, I'm posting that off to you this week, so
Oh,
that should be with you. So,
appreciate
no
that.
worries,
Yeah, I've
no
got a
worries. But
couple
yeah,
of, and that's the vamp, right? That's based on the
that's
vamp.
it's basically the lamp. It's just recolored, and yeah. So,
Well, I've got a couple of like I've got the original green vamp, the vamp
mm.
two, and then I got one of the stinger, which is
Oh,
a,
okay,
a
yeah, yeah,
black
yeah,
vamp,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then they put one out in Toys R Us a few years ago. It was a gray camo vamp,
Okay,
but that one, the black one with the yellow, I'm like, I've seen this in quite a few different color schemes, but this one is really like they've really got a nice one for this
yeah.
one.
That
Like,
was that was yes, AS Panther.
yeah,
Yeah,
the Panther. I think that's right up there with the original OD green. Like,
yeah,
it's a really beautiful color scheme on it.
yeah. Because I mean, I like the very first GI Joes, like
Zap, rock and
that
roll, short
rock and
fuse.
roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just
I
just
think I just
green.
yeah, that was military, and you just thought that is so cool.
And they're a
And
lot
everything
like
sort of like
they're like the original Ninja Turtles too. They're different shades of green, but it's all
yeah, yeah,
green.
yeah, yeah. But even I mean, even the head sculpts are practically the same, but
Yeah.
just like some have got beards and stuff like that. But do you know what? As a kid, that didn't, I'm not worried about that, and
I
it's just
I didn't care. Yeah, like it
no,
was
exactly.
different. It was different enough. I do remember not wanting Hawk because I had short
Oh,
fuse, and I
oh,
went,
okay,
oh come on, the exact same head. Like like rock and roll and breaker. That's not a problem because
yeah,
blonde, brown hair, even clutch, same head still,
yeah,
but black hair, no problem. But I remember I had short fuse and seeing Hawk through his window in the MMS and going, oh come on, like
Yeah.
Like even at that young an age in '82 when those came out, I remember looking at it and going, "Man, that's lazy. Try harder, guys." Like having some
Yeah.
semblance of concept of molds
Yeah.
and costs and stuff, and going, "Ah, oh, come on." And for many years, it's always bugged me that Hawk has the same, not just same head as Short Fuse, but basically almost the same hair color. Like
Oh
they,
wow.
I don't know if it's the same blonde or very close. And the
Yeah.
way I've finally gotten around it is I don't put Hawk's helmet on because I've been reading
Okay.
the comics, and Hawk never wears his helmet in the comic books ever.
Oh.
Never. He's always just the crew cut. Now the figure doesn't have a crew cut, but he never wears the helmet. So just by popping the helmet with the visor off a Hawk, I go, oh wow, that's Hawk. Because Short Fuse now, that little visual differential, Short Fuse has the helmet with the visor. And
Yeah.
Hawk is just, I don't wear a helmet. I dodge bullets or I catch them with my teeth. Like, that's the difference right there. They shouldn't have even included a helmet with Hawk.
I didn't even realize they'd done a Hawk previously to the actual, because the only Hawk I knew of at the time was
General.
General Hawk.
Yeah.
When he was the General, I didn't realize that he was one of the first ones to come out, and I was like, oh, okay, wow, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of Joe fans had that. Like, who's this Hawk guy? Where'd he come from? And then you find out,
Yeah.
oh, you can't really say this Poochie, this new guy just kind of came out of nowhere and stole Duke's job. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, you got me on a technicality. He has been here since the beginning, and
Yeah.
I guess Duke is the Poochie. Duke is
Yeah.
the one who swooped in.
No,
So,
I mean, I think to a certain point in time, I think after what year was it? When was Quick Kick?
85.
It was
I can't
85.
believe I can just say that right off.
That's wow, that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I think after 85, I think from a personal point of view, I think it was starting to get into the eco warriors type sort of thing,
Yeah.
where there was like a luminous and stuff like that, and really bright colours, and I just thought,
Yeah,
not,
86 was a fantastic year. I actually,
oh really?
when I take a good look at 86, I mean, sci-fi is the really bright neon green one that you go, whoa.
Yes,
And he has
yeah,
a laser rifle too, but like in 86, they had Lowlight, the sniper. They had
oh yeah,
Leatherneck, who's like pure marine. They had Beachhead, like
oh okay,
awesome Ranger figure. They had Iceberg, another great Arctic figure. Just looking at my 86 figures, Hawk was a fantastic looking throwback figure with his tank commander jacket. There's so much good stuff. Lifeline was, a great looking medic. Yeah, you had Dial Tone and Mainframe who were like kind of getting sci-fi looking, but there was still quite a bit of good military stuff in 86 as well as
uh,
87, like Green Beret, Falcon in 87, great looking
oh
figure.
wow, okay,
And then it's surprising. Definitely the sci-fi started to take over by the end, but like, even in the final year, in 94 when everything was neon and squirting water and spacesuits and it's like
yeah,
this is not GI Joe anymore. But then you see Navy SEAL Shipwreck, who's
yeah,
gray and black, and he's got fins and he's got a gun and a mask, and it's like this figure could have come out in 83 or 84. Like you've captured that magic with the one figure, and there's a few figures in that final year that are like really capture the magic. So it's nice to find those rare gems in those later lines where everything was so bright and
yeah,
change color, get
yeah,
slimed and all that type of stuff. It's nice. It would have been nice if they just kept at it, but when sales start to go down, you start
yeah.
trying different things and hoping
Yeah,
that
exactly.
these new gimmicks will catch fire.
I mean, I see you've got a big collection of the 25th anniversary. I think that's a
Love
great
them.
line as well, and I've got a few 25th anniversary figures as well. What do you make of the recent updates, the 6 inch?
The
And
6 inch.
will you be getting those? Yeah.
Well, I believe I'm getting the Snake Eyes soon, thanks to very generous good brother Bill Pagan. So I was holding off on getting that because I want the classic look. Like when I look at the anniversary figures, which are right in front of me right now, I love how they look like the originals. I love that the card
Yeah.
art looks very similar to the original card art. And
Yeah.
I was wanting a 6 inch, kind of exactly like what they did with Star Wars, where like it comes on the card that's similar to the vintage Star Wars card.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not reinventing the wheel. They're giving, Tatooine Luke his Tatooine outfit, and He looks just like the little figure, but bigger. So that's what I was holding out hope for. The new team, like the new designs, are the new designs, and in 10 years we'll look at them and we'll be very used to them, and we'll say, "Oh yeah, classified." Just
Yeah.
like now we look at the Renegades designs and we go, "Oh yeah, Renegades. That's its own thing."
I was never, I never
Resolute,
sort of like, I didn't see any of the Resolute. I've seen Resolute. I thought that was a great cartoon. I
yeah.
thought that was a great animated series. I've not seen Renegades.
Renegades, if you liked Resolute, I think you'll like Renegades. Resolute's
Yeah,
like it's a one shot. It was just 1 hour,
yeah.
and it didn't stick around long enough for anyone to get sick of it. It left people wanting more. So if you liked Resolute, I'd highly recommend Renegades because it looks the same. Well,
Oh, okay.
similar
Yeah,
animation,
yeah.
similar tone. It's got some serious action with serious stakes, but they never
Yeah.
cross a line.
Uh,
It's not Game of Thrones. No one's
yeah.
getting eviscerated in this thing. Yeah, I really liked it, and there were quite a
Yeah.
few tips of the cap to the old school fans, like when they brought Michael Bell in to play the voice of Duke's
Oh, okay.
father. Duke's father
Oh,
was in
wow.
it. Yeah, so
Oh, okay. Interesting.
yeah, like it feels like it was made by old school Joe fans instead
Oh, okay.
of we're gonna come in and we're gonna show you how it's done these days. It's like no,
Oh,
let's just do it how it used to be done. That's
yeah.
that's what Renegades felt like to me, and
Okay. Yeah.
it's pretty much the A Team meets the Fugitive.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you like the A Team, if you like the
Yeah.
Fugitive,
Yeah. Yeah.
GI Joe Renegades is a
Oh,
meeting of the
okay.
two
Sweet.
with
Okay.
GI Joe in it.
And what about the upcoming Snake Eyes film that's coming out?
We'll
You looking
see.
forward to that? Yeah, or
We'll
you?
see. I honestly I don't I don't care. That's the truth. Like I'll see it,
Yeah.
but beforehand I don't care. I'm not excited. I'm not pumped. I'm not like oh I have no dog in the race. Like
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a chicken in the fight.
Okay.
I just because I've done that for a long time. I got pumped about new Star Wars movies and went oh and luckily
Yeah.
the GI Joe animated stuff has been awesome. Like well, Resolute and Renegades, I really enjoyed it. But
Yeah.
there's been other big things brought back. Like how many Terminator movies have they come out with? And I did that for each one of them. See, the people forget that we've been through all this. Like
Yeah.
hype. Oh my God, this is gonna be the best thing ever. Thundercats roar and
Yeah.
all that stuff. It's just you get I get tired after a
You
while.
build you build your expectation up, and then you kind of like,
So I'd prefer to have zero expectations, and that's
that's
how I
no,
keep
that's
them in
yeah.
check by not caring. And that's why some of the most some of my most enjoyed movies and TV shows are because I had zero or negative expectations
Yeah. Yeah.
watching it, and like when I watched The Equalizer, I was blown away by it, the movie, and that's because I
Yeah.
had zero expectations. Well, it's one of my favorite movies ever. And when part two came out, uh-oh, it's like, I hope this is as good as the first one.
No spoilers. I haven't seen the second one yet.
Well,
I have not seen the second.
no spoilers, but I didn't think it was as good, anywhere near as good as the first movie.
Okay.
So that's what happens if you get something that's really amazing and then they do a sequel, like that's the danger. Like
Yeah.
one way or another, they're going to disappoint you, whether it's with that thing or with that thing's follow up. So I think it's
Yeah.
always important to just let things play out as they may. But like, I'm not the type of person anymore to be there opening night,
Yeah.
or even like if it's home video release, watch it the first day. Everything that comes out these days, like I don't know it's out until like someone mentions it. Hey, have you seen it yet? That's out. Like that's my reaction to almost everything. The
Yeah.
new show just dropped. That's out. Like yeah, it came out 3 days. Like Clone Wars, right? Have you seen
Oh, okay.
Clone
Okay.
Wars? I'm like, that's out. Yeah, it's out. It came out 2 days ago. What do you mean? Like I don't follow. I
Yeah.
don't care so that I can care if it's really good when I eventually
Yeah.
do see it.
Yeah.
It's easier to care that way for me.
I get that. But talking of Snake Eyes, I actually had the great fortune of meeting Ray Park.
Oh, cool.
What a top guy this guy is. I mean, I cannot praise him enough for how he is with people. He's genuinely interested in what you want to say. He'll stop and talk to you. If you're like last in the queue and they're saying, come on, we've got to go. Right. No, 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 no. I'm sitting here. I'm going to talk to these guys. He's amazing. So the first time I met him was just before they were releasing Phantom Menace. So that was
Darth
back
Maul.
in
Yeah.
Dark Maul. So I met him then. And then we met him a couple of times since with me and my other half. And again, we got another one signed for Darth Maul and another one signed as Snake Eyes. The guy is just amazing. He really is. What a top guy. If you get a chance to see him in a Comic Con, then go and see him. He's well worth the money.
And a lot of people forget he was Toad in X-Men as well.
Yes, yeah, and he was the headless horseman in Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, right.
He was the stunt guy, so he was the guy doing the swords and stuff like that, because it was Christopher Walken at the end when he put the head on.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was Ray Park going around with the swords and stuff like that and doing all the sword fighting. But yeah.
So what are your feelings? I've shared mine. What are your feelings on Snake Eyes?
Again,
I think that says it all.
no, well, I mean, they say they want to reboot it, and I just hope they go back to the essence of G.I. Joe, which was like it was in the 80s. I felt they had modernised the film too much in Rise of Cobra.
Yeah.
They kind of went back and tried to make it as much G.I. Joe as possible in Retaliation.
But they were shackled by the continuity of the first movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did like Storm Shadow. I thought
him and Snake Eyes.
I thought those two were amazing. Cobra Commando, even like Cobra Commander in the second one, because it went back to his face sort of thing, and I thought, okay,
and
now we're getting somewhere.
And the attitude also. He just felt more like Cobra Commander than what they did in the first movie.
But as it's a shame. I mean, again, I'm not going to knock the film. I enjoyed them watching them as a film. If I'd never known anything about G.I. Joe, I would have enjoyed them. But because I grew up in the 80s and knew of G.I. Joe, and I just looked at it and thought, again, they've lost the essence of how it was in the 80s. And I think going forward, if they want to do films like that, the people they need to get are the older generation, the guys that actually were our fans, because I think then they can build it on and take it from there. I don't know whether kids are going to be interested in G.I. Joe these days or not. Things change, times change.
I wish they would adapt Larry Hama's comics.
Yeah.
They really are, in my opinion, and a lot of people feel the same way, just as good as all of the great Marvel comics. The Marvel hero comics of days gone by, and they were Marvel comics. That's why I keep my expectations so low. I want G.I. Joe Real American Hero 80s Marvel comics, and I won't get them. So that's why I'm like, you might do something good, but it won't be great. Could have been great. So
I think he was an exceptional writer.
Yeah,
he was an exceptional.
Going back and reading those old comics, I'm floored that these came out when they did and were the quality they were. And I just wish that Hasbro would behave more like Marvel Studios does, in the sense that Marvel Studios treats their comics like it's the gospel. Like, these comics are sacred. These aren't just fun comics that we can use as guidelines, because that's what it feels like the Star Wars people are doing right now. They're taking all the books and all the comics and going, oh, these could be fun guidelines. Thrawn, he looks interesting. Let's throw him in there. And the Emperor's a clone in Dark Empire. Let's cherry pick that. So they're just kind of picking and choosing. Whereas it feels like Marvel Studios is going, this stuff is sacred. I mean, we can change this and that, but it needs to really retain the essence, the spirit of the original thing. And they always do. Or almost always do. Like, those Marvel movies are fantastic. And because they're so true to those old Marvel comics, I just wish Hasbro would grab those, those G.I. Joe comics and hold them with reverence and go and read them and go, wow, like, we really don't know the gold mine that we're sitting on here. Same with the Transformers comics as well. That's another thing that took me out of the Transformers movie, because at the movies by Michael Bay, because the Bob Budiansky stories were great, and then Simon Furman came on and he created this incredible lore of Unicron and Primus, going back eons, going back to the dawn of time, and the history of the Matrix and all that, and none of that made it into the movies. And I'm just wondering, where's the guy at Hasbro holding the comics going, did you read these 10 times? Because if I was running the company, that's what I would say to anyone writing my movie, So,
definitely.
I'd be like, so you're writing the Joe movie? Yep. Did you read these 10 times? Well, no, I skimmed through them once. All right, well, if you want to keep your job, you're going to read them 10 times
Mm.
and you're going to get them. So you're going to read them 10
Yeah,
times and then you're going to tell me if you really got it. And I'll be able to
yeah,
tell. I'll be able to tell if you're BSing or if you really, really got it. And if the person's like, I'm not feeling it. Okay, well, you're not the right guy for the job.
yeah.
Let's ask
Exactly.
Larry if he's busy.
No, exactly, exactly. I just don't know what it is. I really don't. And I think it. I mean, it's like I think they missed the boat with the Transformers movies, the Michael Bay ones, and I certainly think they missed the boat with the GI Joe ones as well. Again, I suppose if I didn't know anything about it and I was a kid this day and age, I would be like, yeah, okay, that was pretty cool. But
Yeah.
getting to know the history and like the stories by Larry Hamill and stuff like that, you just think, wow. So I mean, we took a lot of those what he did in his comics, and we actually put that into our playtime. We took those missions and we like read it and stuff like that. And yeah, okay. And we actually put that and we was acting it out with the figures and stuff like that. And we just had endless amount of fun reading those comics and just putting our own spin on it when we were actually playing games and stuff like that with Joe Joe when we were younger. It
Yeah.
was it was amazing.
This loops
Definitely.
perfectly back to the beginning of the conversation when we were talking about style over substance.
Mm,
And I feel like a lot of the things that they do today, the things that they sacrifice in order to get the style, the substance that they're sacrificing are basically, to use another like analogy, a food analogy. It's like you got a hamburger that we used to eat in the 80s that had bacon, lettuce, tomato,
mm,
and mustard and ketchup on it and barbecue sauce. It's just stacked and everything was on it, peppercorn and incredible. And today it's just a hamburger with no
yeah,
toppings, nothing,
yeah,
not even
yeah,
ketchup on it. Here you go. Like, but where's all the stuff? And that's the stuff that we're pleading for. The people who experience the stuff, the people who've never
yeah.
experienced it, they don't know. They just go, "That's a good burger." You're right. You're correct. It is a good burger. But if
Mm,
you put all this other stuff on it, you would never forget that burger. Instead of
yeah.
just going, "That was not a bad burger."
I mean, in today's, I mean, I don't sort of like take too much notice of what's going out on toy wise these days. I mean, do they have anything this day and age that this generation of children will look back in like 10, 20 years time and think, yeah, that was great. I mean, I just feel the 80s had it all. Star Wars, GI Joe, Action Force, Transformers, Master of the Universe. They had so much cool stuff in the 80s. Do you think that this day and age now, kids will look back and say that was great?
I think if they do, there's a lot of people who go, they won't with anything, like, because it's all about cell phones and tablets these days.
Yeah,
I have a sneaking suspicion Transformers, the last few years of Transformers, will have that effect on some.
yeah,
Power of the Primes, Earthrise, and Siege, like those in particular, the new Earthrise figures are exceptional. They look masterpiece Transformers quality. They look like they are much more expensive than they actually are. So the detail is incredible, and then the articulation is fantastic. The transformations are great. They look fun, not that complicated,
yeah,
and I think they're probably pretty durable too, so they can take getting dropped or thrown across the room. So I have a feeling that Earthrise will be one in 20 years that people have on their shelves and go, oh yeah, man, Earthrise, vintage Earthrise figures. As far as
yeah.
everything else, I don't know. Like there's just so much stuff that's redundant. Like there's new Ghostbusters movie figures coming out and they look great, but Mattel's already done that, and there's going to be new GI Joe stuff. Like at least it's a new scale with GI Joe.
Mm.
So that's something. But like with Star Wars, hasn't every figure been done 10 times already? Like how many Bespin Lukes
Oh,
exist? And
yeah, I know, I know. It's a shame. I wish I'd do something that, like they haven't done, like a Cloud Car Pilot or Lobot, or some of the figures that they haven't released yet. I mean, it just seems to me that as much as I love Star Wars, there's overkill on certain figures
yeah,
in the same line, and you just think, but people buy them. People
I,
are buying them.
I used to joke with my friends in the 90s when I first got into Star Wars, and I had a few friends that were into Star Wars as well. And we would joke about, like, we knew of the Kenner figures and how zany it got by the end, like, just with the Kenner line. And
Yeah,
I forget how many they made, but it wasn't as many as exist today. But I remember saying, like, Man, they've made some obscure figures in that Kenner line. Like, why did they make some of the guys from the Cantina or Jabba's Palace, guys who blink and you miss them, and they have a
Yeah.
figure? So we were joking back then about like, yeah, they should make like just an empty bubble and call it the Force, or put a
Yeah.
boulder, like a little boulder in there, and say it's one of the
Yeah.
meteors from Bespin where Han
Yeah.
navigates
Yeah.
through. But then you could
Yeah.
recolor it and call it a piece of Alderaan, and then you could
Oh, you could
recolor it.
be.
You know, but
Was
they're actually
that the
doing
last
that now.
17 you were talking about?
What's
Was that
that?
the last 17? Was that the last 17 figures you're talking about, Kenner?
Well, more throughout. I mean, I think there were some
Right.
Empire figures, like there's some random characters, like very, very little screen time.
Yeah.
Like I just always imagined if you get a toy, then you've got a pretty featured role in your TV show or your movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, when I think of Transformers, the only Transformer who didn't really get a good big part was Skids. And even he appeared and had a few lines in a couple of episodes. But
Yeah.
like, and I wish I could think of a vintage Kenner figure right off the bat. Maybe I'll do a Google search for vintage Kenner figures here. Star Wars figures. I can chop this part out as I'm
That's
searching.
okay.
But this should be fun. Just see how obscure can we get here.
I mean, there's a Greedo, there's a Walrus Man, there's a Hammerhead, there's like a little red Snaggletooth.
So it looks like there were 92 Star Wars vintage figures. All
Yeah.
right, Rancor Keeper.
Yeah. Case in point. Case in point.
You
You know
know,
what I mean? It's
uh,
yeah, I do.
number 15. I don't know what his name is, but he's like a big, weird-looking dude. Random like the medical droid. Is it
Oh yeah, yeah.
two one B?
Yeah.
General Crix Madine. Like,
Wow, what a
you-
hairpiece he had.
are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
I know.
So Gonk, Gonk got a figure, you know, an Ugnaught,
Yeah.
and that was pretty wild. But that was you know, whoever was deciding on what figures to make, they were basically creating the toy collecting as we would know it forever. Like no one's
Yeah.
off limits. You know,
No.
even this little obscure guy can get a figure. Going forward, I'd love to see some toys that we've never seen before. Like one of the ones I'm really excited for is we're finally getting a Roddy Piper from They Live
Okay.
figure. I think it's going to be like an 8-inch NECA
okay.
figure. So he's kind of going to be like those vintage Mego Star Trek
Oh, right.
8-inch
Yeah.
figures with clothes and stuff. But
Yeah.
there's never been one ever, like since the movie came out in '89. So
Oh,
we
wow.
we finally get that. I guess we can end on that. What's the one toy that has never been made, to your knowledge, that you'd love to see?
Oh, wow.
Put you on the spot.
Okay. That has put me right on the spot. Wow. Okay.
Could be from anything.
Okay. Off the top of my head, I'm going to go for. She was nearly made, but wasn't in the original Star Wars line, and that is the Jabba's large dancer.
Oh, yeah.
That off the top of my head, I mean, you really caught me cold there.
Yeah, I don't
You know
know.
what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it's ever
Yeah.
been made.
No, they had a prototype, and they were going to do it, and then obviously their ratings had gone down, or Star Wars wasn't the fashion, so they didn't go through with it.
Mm.
But yeah, that'd have been a good one.
That'll be the next HasLab crowdfunding $500 figure.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Uh,
Gosh. Wow.
just before we finish here, I want to get your thoughts on the sail barge. What do you think of that?
Yeah. If I had the money, why not?
Yeah, you got
Unfortunately, I
you'd
don't.
make-
If I had the room, but yeah,
you'd make the space just like the flag.
I'd make the space just like the flag. I mean, one day I will, whether I get it in pieces or one big go, I'll get the flag.
I just
love
love
the-
that it's out there. I love that
Yeah.
they made it because a lot of people wanted it. I had heard about for years people wanting, like, you know, they were supposed to do it, they didn't do it, they wanted it, and I don't have it. I'll probably never have it, but I just love knowing that it's out there and people have these huge Star Wars collections that were
Yeah.
they didn't realize were incomplete, and then they put the sail barge. I've seen pictures of the sail barge in people's collections, and it's like awesome. You have your flag. Star Wars fans have their flag now, because that's exactly like when you see a flag in a GI Joe collection, and it's like that ties the whole collection together. That barge is beautiful.
If you give me a choice, if I had to choose the flag or the sail barge, I would go the flag.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
it is more iconic.
Yeah, I have enough Star Wars. I have
Yeah.
a lot of Star Wars. So, and it's to me, it's in the vintage collection. It's not a vintage from
It's
way
modern.
back when.
Yeah.
So it's a modern take on a vintage line. So I'll go for the flag.
I'm also glad that it exists, because for a long time collectors have been saying we'll never see anything like the flag again. Like
Yeah.
that was absurd. That was guys really swinging their swinging their Uzis
Oh, yeah.
and
I
going,
mean,
look what we can do.
how it was priced up in those days and what it was worth in those days, it was a steal. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
honestly,
In retrospect,
you look back and you think, how much? And you just think, wow.
how many kids got backhanded? Can I have that? No, like it wasn't just
Exactly.
it wasn't
Yeah.
just a no. It was the
Yeah.
audacity of asking. It's $100.
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
I know.
And now, like if we had time
It's a lot.
machines, we would be
Yeah.
renting
Oh.
moving trucks and filling them,
Yeah.
driving around town, and
You would.
absolutely.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
But Stuart, man, this has been awesome chatting with you. Thanks so much for taking the
No,
time.
no, seriously. Listen, I think what you do is amazing. You have one of the most amazing collections I've ever seen, and I love watching your vlogs and stuff like that. And I'm just grateful that we had this opportunity to chat. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much. And everyone out there, this is Stuart. Hope you enjoyed getting to know him more, and you'll see him in the comments section and around. So feel free to chat with him, say hi, and chat with each other too. Thanks a lot for watching Toy Guys Talking or listening in podcast form. Till we chat again, Nerdmas Day.
Namaste.